You know?
I'm good. And you're good?
Okay. The regular virtual meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Park District is now called to order. It is Monday, May 18th, 2020. The time is 5:15 p.m. And JoAnn, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Ernst.
Here.
Commissioner Engel.
Here.
Commissioner Rollins.
Here.
Commissioner Vogelsang.
Here.
Commissioner Wright.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, JoAnn. Commissioners, we've had a request to move the item number 4, the FAU MOU, to number 1. Do you have any problem with that?
No, I'm good.
Okay, and any other changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, it's time for public requests. Brianne, would you read the requests that have come in by email first, please?
Sure will. We have a few here from several people. We have Roberto Gonzalez, a Boca resident. I fully support the opening of the old Boca Chica tennis courts for pickleball. This would be a very cost-effective and help provide a needed improvement while you are deciding what to do with the golf course. By the way, the recently installed fence around the tennis courts are partially collapsed and doesn't look good at all. Thank you for considering this suggestion, Roberto Gonzalez, Boca resident. We do have the fences being repaired. This is from Tina Gold. Dear Commissioners, considering it will be several years before you have the funds for the golf course development, it would be a good move to open the former tennis courts for pickleball. These courts are in good condition and just need to remind the public to read.
What was that?
I'm sorry. Okay, similar to several other parks in the area, such as Hidden Lake and Sandpine, these facilities could be open to all residents with minimal cost or on-site management required, possibly one person to open early in the morning and close at sunset, similar to nearby Yamato Scuba. Considering you are actively considering spending $75,000 at Ocean Strand with no recreational plan, this new pickleball facility would be a great improvement and provide a facility for the growing demand for pickleball. I would recommend a portalet for restroom facilities and not a $10,000 a month trailer similar to the dog park or your SRC costs during construction. This would be a great way to gauge interest in outdoor pickleball. If this proves popular, then you may want to build this formally into the golf course project. Respectfully, Janet Goldman. Excuse me, I don't know why it came through as Tina Gold. This is from Barbara Chaffee. Dear Commissioners, I am voicing, sorry. Dear Commissioners, I'm voicing my objection to pickleball courts or playing pickleball on the west side of Northwest 2nd Avenue, including the parking for pickleball participants. We have been in discussion for the past 4 years about golf course and what to put where on both the west and east side of Northwest 2nd Avenue with no progress towards golf education, etc. on this property as yet.
Dear Commissioners, I'm voicing my objection to pickleball courts or playing pickleball on the west side of Northwest 2nd Avenue, including parking for pickleball participants.
I don't know who's talking.
Can you mute it?
Yeah, I can. I can't. No. You are struggling with your budget to accumulate funds to undertake future construction. Boca National Golf Course on the west side of Northwest 2nd Avenue, and now a commissioner has suggested funding pickleball in this area. This seems like a poor financial discussion and/or decision. My neighbor, a sports and training advocate, says he regularly plays pickleball at the Sandpine Park, 300 Newcastle Street off of Yamato and Dixie Highway. I mean, you got to keep some social distance.
I've got my mask on.
I can't do this with you here. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was just going to try to help you mute.
Okay. You're struggling. My neighbor, a sports training advocate, says he regularly plays pickleball at Sandpine Park, 300 Newcastle Street off Yamato and Dixie Highway, which is usually empty. I believe this location is a city park. In addition, I noticed that there are 6 pickleball courts at Sugar Sand Park, which can be advertised more to the public. If pickleball has such a popular following in Boca Raton, the city recreation department should also be involved in incorporating this activity at various city parks for the residents and pickleball groups. We have one more to read here, and this is, yeah, those are the last ones. I just want to remind the public to please mute yourselves when you come into the meeting so that we can get these read onto the record and recorded clearly. Good afternoon, Commissioners. On behalf of our 3,000 youth and adult players, 350 volunteer coaches, and 200 middle and high school student community service members, SABR is requesting that you approve the FAU Memorandum of Understanding for the 2 Glades Road soccer fields. These fields have been foundational to serving our members for the past 25 years and are needed as much, if not more than ever, now and into the future. At least 1,000 of our youth players use these fields for practices and games. Not having these fields in the community inventory would have a ripple effect for all our members. Our team Boca players use these fields for their practices and games. We need these fields on Friday nights to play our girls' recreational games. 2 years ago, the U.S. Soccer Federation published its Play, Practice, Play unified curriculum for parent volunteer coaches of U5 to U19 children. SABR adopted it immediately for our children. Age-appropriate practice times are a key teaching component of PPP, which received 90% approval from our coaches this season. To get more than 650 of our elementary school-age children off the fields by 7:30 on a school night, we needed the Spanish River, Woodlands, Estridge, El Rio, and Patchogue fields during this past season. Even with all those fields, we had to place more than 2 teams on a field in some age groups. We have about 350 adults that play year-round and pick up in in-house league games. If the Glades Roads fields were not available, many of these games could be impacted since youth have precedence over adults by long-standing city scheduling policy. SABR policy reflects the same priority for children. As I said earlier, we've already had to reduce practice space in some age groups beginning at under 9. We see other trends now and on the horizon that point to more fields needed. Population demographics in the district have changed. Addison, Meisner, and Verde are under expansion to K-8. A new elementary school will be built next to Don Estridge when the Addison Meisner project is completed. We're seeing youth and adult registrations from new residential construction addresses in downtown Boca and Northwest Boca, in and around the park at Broken Sound and the Spanish River Library. Parents want more soccer for their children. We're being pressed for more longer youth seasons like Little League, lacrosse, and rugby currently operate. This January, we opened a trial of GU11 to GU12, 6-week spring summer for 44 players. It was filled in 8 hours and then expanded in a few days to 66 that wanted to play. That's 40% of the girls in those age groups. In the last 2 weeks of our U5, U6 season in February, we offered a 4-week extended season if enough players signed up in the last minute. 29% of families registered their boys and girls. The other age groups will also want spring seasons as these are offered in Delray and West Boca. Parents and coaches want more individual skills training, i.e. how to dribble, pass, and shoot. We're planning new skills training programming that will need more field space. Our adult program is currently at capacity due to limited field space. In 2019, we added a new adult spring league for men under 35 following requests from residents whose children had played SABR and had to go elsewhere to play since we had programming for men 35 and older. The 4 teams we offered were filled immediately. In 2020, we could only add 4 more teams to our men under 35 league because there's only 1 more night of field space available. The need for fields follows from the current expansion of our schools and new residential construction. These children, their parents, and new residents to Boca Raton play soccer. SABR, the district, and the city have served these players for more than 40 years. Please approve the memorandum so our programs are not disrupted. Thanks. Earl Starkoff, President. That's all the public comments.
Is there anyone on the phone who would like to call in? Are you getting any calls?
I have Greg with his hand up, Greg Galanis.
Okay. Hi, Greg.
Hold on.
Hello.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, guys. How is everybody?
Everybody's good. For the record, would you give your address too and your last name, Greg?
Certainly. Greg Galanis, 1780 Southwest 22nd Ave, Boca Raton, Florida, 33486. First of all, I want to say that I'm pleased that you guys are all well and back at it, doing your job. It's difficult times and priorities are shifting, but I have a question for you and a comment for you. Question I'm getting from a lot of our members is, what is the status of the response from the city and the golf course in general? Somebody could speak to that.
Brianne, would you like to answer his question?
Well, we recently had a meeting where the board gave direction. I'm gonna just mute you real quick because, well, it's echoing. We told the city that we're still seeking approval of the course. We do understand, obviously, there have been some major disruptions to the city operations during this COVID-19 pandemic. So we've been understanding and patient with that. We're also going to look at our budget as we move forward. We have not progressed with any plans or designs on the golf course, but it's still out there. We're just taking a breath, I guess, as we start to open back up and move forward on things.
Yeah, certainly there are other priorities, and everybody is sensitive to that. The golfers in general are real pleased to have a golf course, and Boca Muni is in exceptional shape. So the last thing I'll leave you with is a comment that seems to be consistent across the board from our golfers is, they want you guys to reiterate your commitment to building the golf course and going it alone, making sure that it's what you guys want to do, because if you're not, it may be a good time to move in another direction. That said, I'll mute my microphone and let you guys respond.
We lost you on that last sentence.
Okay, I was just saying I will mute my microphone and let you guys respond.
No, your last sentence of your comment. Thanks.
Oh, okay. So the comment was, if you guys are still committed, we're behind you 100%. But if you're not, it may be appropriate to pursue other options in terms of the ability to move forward. I know the city last week approved a 6-month extension on the sale to GL Homes, and with the uncertain times and uncertain tax revenues, I think there's going to be a greater sense of urgency on their part to close the deal with GL Homes, and it'd be good to know, where we're going from there.
Well, speaking, we are still committed, but we still need the design approval. So if your group would like to approach City Council to encourage their approval of the design, we would be eternally grateful.
I know for a fact that a dozen of our folks have been sending direct messages to them with that. Maybe, I don't know if there was a deadline or request for a time frame on their response, but just maybe a note reiterating your intentions and your desire to go it alone, and ask to get it on the agenda for discussion on their end.
That's a good idea. Is there anything else, Greg?
Just stay safe, folks. Stay safe, everybody. And again, it's good to see you all.
Take care. Do we have any more callers, Brianne? You're muted.
We have somebody with their hand up. Hold on.
Okay.
Last 4 digits of phone number 1.
Yeah, this is Ryan Bowersock. Can you hear me?
Hi, Ryan.
Hi.
Would you give your address, please?
441 Northeast 46th Street, Boca Raton, Florida, 33431.
Thank you. What would you like to say?
I'm not sure where you are in the agenda, but I was given information about the FAU memo and the memorandum, so I didn't want to go out of turn, but I just wanted to voice support for approval, I think.
Okay, this is the time to do it. This is for public requests, so please continue.
Oh, well, I mean, it's just, the SABR League uses those FAU fields, and I mean, they're the best. They're the best fields in the area, so we're really spoiled to be able to play on them. So I just, I'm hoping we can continue to do that, when things get back to normal.
Okay.
I mean, I've been playing, I don't know how many seasons now, probably 3 seasons, and it's been great. I mean, those fields are the best part of it.
Well, we appreciate your comment, and we will have that as the first thing on our agenda, our regular business tonight.
Okay. Well, thanks for the help on that.
Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else, Brianne?
We have Edwin Salazar.
Okay.
Hi, I echo Greg. Glad to see you guys are all doing well. My address is 2042 Park Place, Boca Raton 33486. I'm actually also a parent that has 3 kids that play in the SABR League and Team Boca and uses those FAU fields, as well as a parent that plays in the SABR Adult League. And I got to echo Ryan's comments that it's really huge for the parents that not only have kids that play SABR and Team Boca that are involved with their kids, but also involved in still playing in adult leagues to show our kids that, you know, the dedication that we still have for them and also for the sport. So I 100% echo Ryan's comments. I'm actually one of the captains in the league and can't say that every year I look forward to being able to play on those FAU fields like Ryan said. So I hope that 100% you guys are supportive of the kids using the fields and the parents that are still participate and, you know, still kind of act on our childish whims by still playing in the adult SABR League. So please, you know, take that into consideration for all the families that are involved. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you, Edwin, for your 2 cents. We appreciate it. Anybody else, Brianne?
Let me scroll through here. I don't see any more hands raised.
Okay, perfect. Well, hearing none, public requests are now closed. It's time for the approval of the minutes of the regular virtual meeting that was held on May 4th, 2020. It can be found on page 3 of your agenda packet. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Was that you, Craig? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
JoAnn, Commissioner Engel made the motion and Commissioner Ernst seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. JoAnn, would you do a roll call vote of this, please?
Sure. Commissioner Ernst,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to proceed to our regular business, and we've moved the FAU Memorandum of Understanding. Commissioners, did you all receive that, and were you all able to review it since it was sent out last night? Steve says he has. Bob?
Yes, ma'am. I've reviewed it.
Okay, Aaron?
Yes.
Okay, and Craig, have you reviewed it?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so
Just so the public knows that a different agreement than what was in the agenda packet was sent out last night with some updated revisions that highlight, it allows for either party to leave the agreement. We did away with some of the hold harmless language that was in the agreement, and it clarified the payment plan to be annual rather than quarterly. For anybody who has the agenda packet.
we'll start with Commissioner Engel. Would you like to comment on this? And any comments, any suggestions, any changes?
I'm good with what's there. I'm glad we have an out, which we didn't have previously. And I know the importance of the fields to not only soccer players, but to their families and to the other residents of the community. So I'm ready to vote in favor of the MOU as currently formatted, what we got last night, in fact.
Thank you. Commissioner Wright?
I read through it. Everything looks good from what I see after things were changed.
Okay. Commissioner Rollins?
No, I think Brianne did a nice job of capturing the intent of this facilities use agreement. And I'm happy that we were able to negotiate an extension on that, because without these facilities, a lot of our programs would be impacted as far as trying to shuffle folks around to meet their recreational needs. So I'm in support of the facilities use agreement as presented to us.
Thank you. Commissioner Ernst?
Madam Chairman, my thoughts are echoed as the other commissioners. I think it is a good thing to have. It's actually an excellent thing. I certainly have one who's coached on those fields. I appreciate the fields. I appreciate the partnership between FAU and SABR and the things that have gone on with that. So I fully support the concept of it. And I really applaud the work done by Brianne to work on the document itself to have some of the things removed, particularly the hold harmless clause. But there's two items that I just would like the board to be aware of, and maybe Jake can kind of address those things. While we could go forward with approving this agreement, the one thing that struck me as reading through the agreement is just the liability, part of it, the transfer of liability. And we're in a different world than when we started these agreements many years ago. And so the concern I have, and maybe Jake can kind of help guide us in is it the liability clean and clear? And what I'm thinking of is more of that agreement is drafted such that it talks about the user as if the district is the user. And we're not really the user of this thing. We're a taxing authority, and we're facilitating it for SABR, and God bless SABR. I'm want to fully support SABR, and we need to help our residents with fields and do everything possible. So that's good. But my concern is do we have enough from a standpoint of liability? As someone who has a daughter who is over there since she was 9 years old and on those fields, and it's very close to 95, and sometimes those parking lot lights aren't on for whatever reason, or the trees are overgrown, but over time the FAU takes care of them. What would happen if there was a tragedy where a child was, taken from that site, and our role and responsibility in it? And my thought is that would be the most horrific thing that could possibly happen. And so I want to make sure the liability language brings it back to the people who are using the field. And so my suggestion would be, to kind of reduce that liability part. In paragraph formerly number 26, it said there are no partnerships without written consent ahead of time. So my suggestion would be is that if SABR is the primary user of these fields, if they are willing to read and accept the terms of this agreement and accept the liability, that we are signing on to, and they have the $1 million of insurance, that we have some kind of agreement that SABR signs with this attached to it, and that the university assigns, because the university is also the one who, they know that a lot of the SABR coaches are, affiliated with FAU one way or another. Really, it should be, we're just facilitating the payment, which I see as no problem. But the liability part, they're on the ground and they see what's going on. And this agreement basically says, we need to inform the university of any deficiencies or anything. And what I'm suggesting is the agreement itself is good, but I would like to know about the liability part of it, and can we perfect that liability so it's really the user, the SABR group who is using the field. Should a tragedy happen, that they are the ones who are more overseeing what's going on there. And don't get me wrong, the coaches there are terrific. They've always waited, at least for my daughter, when she was there, they always wait till the last person is picked up by the parents, and they know those things. But I'm a little concerned that the way the agreement currently reads, we're on the hook for the liability.
Jacob, would you like
Let
to
me jump
weigh in
in.
on that?
Sue, can I jump in there and address part
Okay,
of
please
it?
do, Bob. Yes.
For years, I sat as chairperson of the insurance committee for Florida Youth Soccer. And Florida Youth Soccer does have liability insurance. And as a part of that liability insurance, there's, in fact, with the city, I think we have to sign an indemnification agreement as well. But the agreement that we have with the soccer association has with the city and with us is that we have to name them as additional insured on our liability insurance. That gives first call for any incidents that took place over there at FAU. We have the same exposure on any of our parks, I think, whether it's, at Spanish River, which is owned by the city, Patch Reef, all of those facilities, each one of those facilities are covered by our policy of $1 million per occurrence. We're named as additional insured on the Soccer Association's policy. I can't speak to the hold harmless agreement except to say that as part of the usage of that facility, there is that requirement and stipulation that the interested parties, including the Florida Board of Regents, and it's a whole host of names that the university requires to be put on that certificate. And the certificates come through my office, so I see them go out, and the city is diligent about maintaining those certificates. And when they're up for expiration, the city gets about a 30-day notice to the insurance agent that they're required to produce that. And so far it's worked flawlessly in the years past. But I do believe that the whole harmless agreement that the Soccer Association has to sign also covers some of that indemnification that we're talking about. As far as the whole harmless, I can't speak to that. Jake would have to answer the question as far as our sovereign immunity in that respect.
Jacob, would you like to weigh in and on Bob's comments and Craig's?
Thank you. Just a couple observations, and both commissioners raised some very important points, and just a few things to keep in mind. The MOU is between FAU and the district. There also, as Commissioner Ernst said, there are third parties, SABR in particular, that uses the fields. This agreement facilitates their use. So if there are other relationships, be it whether the city has with SABR or the district has with SABR, there may be an opportunity to have an agreement directly between the district and SABR that provides for the appropriate indemnification, provides for the hold harmless, but it wouldn't necessarily be between the district and FAU embraced in this agreement. As Commissioner Rollins just said, the district as a public agency under Florida law has certain protections that were afforded. We have sovereign immunity. There's certain limitations in liability, which are embraced in the Florida statutes. And both of those things have been incorporated as part of the revisions into the MOU that the commission is discussing this evening. To the extent that we wanted to look at some agreement between the district and SABR in the form of an indemnification agreement, that would clearly provide some additional insulation, some additional protection from that potential liability as a separate agreement to consider if and when we secure the use of the fields through this FAU, through this MOU with FAU. So I don't know if that answers the question, but in an effort to minimize liability, I'm not going to suggest for a moment we'll ever be able to eliminate it, because at the end of the day, if an incident unfortunately were to occur out there, I would suspect the district, along with every other interested party, would likely be named in a potential lawsuit, but we would have sufficient tools in place to protect us from that potential liability. Not only the protections were afforded under state law, but the appropriate hold harmless and indemnification that we could have either through the city or through SABR, who would be the ultimate end user of those fields.
Thank you, Jacob. I was concerned that, down the road, they wouldn't be used enough. And so I did reach out to the president of SABR and was, after I heard the numbers and the reasoning, not only for children, but for adults, I'm totally in favor of going forward with this. Any other comments, commissioners?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize in the comments to Jake is that the city and other interested are specifically named on the certificate as additional insured and would be protected under the policy that's provided by Florida Youth Soccer. The limits themselves are each club has a separate vertical of liability limits with Florida Youth Soccer. So it doesn't mean that if something happened in Tampa that exhausted their limits of liability insurance, it would affect our ability to collect under our own under the own policy with the Soccer Association. FYSA, Florida Youth Soccer does provide that insurance. They pay a lot of money to maintain the limits of $1 million, $2 million million per occurrence, 2 million in the aggregate, to back up that hold harmless agreement that the association might be expected to sign.
And Craig, if it would make you feel any better, coaches for the Soccer Association of Boca Raton each year have to go through a safe sport course to identify any problems like you're concerned about, and whether it be from coaches or from an outside source. So they are more vigilant than maybe back in the day when I was coaching. So every year we have to go through that. Aaron, you've probably had to take that too, right?
Yes, I did.
Yep. Susie, I agree with that. I know SABR as an organization is probably the best and most organized organization out there. And I appreciate, Bob, the insurance walking the dots of how it's connected. My question is just about the agreement itself. Does it connect the dots to SABR, because they're the ones who are going to use the fields correctly and adequately? And it's really a question to Jake, because the agreement, it says in, I think is section 25, says neither party can establish a partnership, a joint venture with anything in the university other than the user, and neither party shall authorize or commit or obligate the other party without others. I don't know if that's the clause where it is, but we are basically the entity as defined as the user. And we really need to, make sure that it's the city or SABR is the user. And that's where I'm just trying to make sure I understand how the dots are going to be connected if there is a real tragedy on the whole thing, because the way the hold harmless was a big deal getting that out, and I agree with that. So I appreciate where we've come in the agreement. I'm just asking, is it appropriate from a legal perspective, do you feel, Jake, in your opinion, will this district be, are we going to be held accountable for something that, if something bad did happen at those fields, and SABR was managing and overseeing it? Whether it's the men's league or the youth leagues or anything like that.
In the event something were to occur, I don't doubt for a moment that the district somebody would seek to bring the district into a potential cause of action. What would be very helpful, I believe, in an effort to, as you say, connect the dots, would be to have a separate agreement with SABR or with any end user who was actually using the fields that provided for additional indemnification and insulation for the district as a result of us allowing them to use the fields that we have a right to use pursuant to this MOU. So there is an additional connection that could be very helpful in an effort to tie that up. And that's not to say this agreement will not provide additional cover for the district. We certainly have that in the context of our sovereign immunity and limitations on liability the statute affords. But additional indemnification and a hold harmless from the end user to the district would, I think, give the commissioner some additional comfort and help us from a legal position.
And with FAU accepting it.
Correct.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, the youth sports organizations have to sign an annual hold harmless agreement with the city. No reason why we could not incorporate that ourselves. And the fact that we have sovereign immunity gives us some protection. I don't want to underemphasize that.
Agreed.
But also, we do want to provide, for anybody who might have an issue, we want there to be an insurance program that would respond to that on our behalf. And that's what we have with the Florida Youth Soccer Association, as well as the adult program has insurance through the Florida State Soccer Association, which is an amateur program for the adults, which has the same type of limits of liability and the same type of additional insured requirements that the Soccer Association Boca has and maintains. I feel comfortable with the way the contract is set up with our sovereign immunity, with the insurance that's available to the community through the Florida Youth Soccer Association. And maybe the one thing to solidify this would be to have the Soccer Association, which are almost the exclusive user of that facilities by this contract, sign that same type of a hold harmless agreement with the district that they do with the city.
That makes sense to me. That would tie it together, and then it would, if the FAU accepted that as well, or at least signed off, acknowledged that we're doing it, which they already know we're doing, that would really kind of make it connect all the dots to me.
Yeah, they get a copy of the certificate of insurance also, and they're as diligent as the city is as far as that goes. And knowing that we're the only user of that facility, pretty much, I don't know anybody else that uses it. I think there may be an occasion where years ago the firefighters had a function over there that the city, that FAU allowed them to do, but it was a kind of a fundraiser for them, but I don't think that's been held in quite a number of years.
Right.
Well, would someone like to make a motion to direct Jacob to create a document that would serve Craig's purposes and make him happy? And
You'll make me happy. I'll make the motion. How about that?
I'll second the motion.
Well, let me make the motion here. So I'd like to make the motion to approve the FAU agreement as presently presented, with the condition that our colleagues at SABR enter into an understanding of agreement similar to what they already have with the city that outlines their insurance and their liability or responsibilities.
well, I think we have two separate agreements, so two separate motions, one for the FAU MOU and then to direct Jacob to create a document for SABR with the district. Is that correct, Jacob?
It depends what the commissioner's trying to do. To be very clear, if there's not a nexus between the two items, the MOU with FAU would presumably pass. And then the second item would be to have SABR sign a hold harmless indemnification with the district. Having not had that exchange with SABR, I don't know what their position would be on that. It sounds like they already have something similar with the city, so presumably there would be no objection. But once the MOU would be approved, there'd be no further action needed on that document. So if they were conditionalized, then the approval of the MOU would only be effective if SABR were to sign that other agreement. So it may matter whether or not they're connected.
Well, I think, Jake, if SABR didn't want to sign the agreement for whatever reason, which they already have something signed, I'd be hard pressed that they wouldn't. We'd just say they can't use the fields. So I think they can be independent. I think, look, SABR's a great organization. I'm sure Earl understands the liability. Bob understands the insurance side of it. I don't anticipate that. There's no reason to connect the two if that's the case. So I go with what Susie recommended.
I would second Craig's motion without the addendum that was mentioned requiring a hold harmless from SABR. I think that should be a separate motion. I agree with that.
Okay, two separate items.
Yes.
So one motion to make a motion to approve the FAU agreement, and a second motion requesting that.
If I may, Commissioner, I'll take them one at a time.
Let's do one at a time. So
Okay.
you motion to approve the FAU MOU as it stands. And Commissioner Rollins, were you seconding that?
Yes, ma'am, I was.
Okay. Is there any other discussion, commissioners? Hearing none. JoAnn, would you do the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Ernst,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes,
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright.
Yeah, yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, JoAnn. Okay, Commissioner Ernst, would you like to do your second motion, please?
The second motion is for the district and the users of the field to enter into an agreement that summarizes the responsibilities per the FAU agreement that will be notified to in written consent in conjunction with this policy to FAU.
second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Engel. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. JoAnn, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Ernst,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes,
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Jacob, you have your,
I have
your-
my instructions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
okay, we have that, thank goodness. And Brianne, thank you for all your work on that. That was a lot. Next item is the prioritization of the district projects found on page 9 of your agenda packet. Brianne, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, this was really just an informational topic and certainly a discussion item if anybody wants to talk about anything in there. I put it together. It was an updated report from last year, updated to this year for our CIP projects to give you guys updates on where we are, what we've completed, what's in the works, and just a timeline on things as they are and as they have been. We're going to be in budget discussions very soon, so prioritizing what comes up and we're going to have to base some of that on the recommendations in that document as well as things that come out of the needs assessment. So this was provided really as an informational resource. And then of course, if there's any questions or anything that come up, we can talk about it now. We can talk about it in a couple more meetings. We can talk about it during the budget, but we wanted to get that information out so you guys have it now ahead of time.
It was very well done, Brianne. Thank you very much. Commissioners, would you like to enter into some discussion about this?
Yes.
Commissioner Engel.
Yeah, I have a particular concern. I've been reading about the effects on the environment of beach renourishment. And and you have to forgive me, I can't give you the source of the information, but I saw some material that illustrates there isn't that much difference between letting Mother Nature take its course and excavating sand from 2 or 3 miles out or 200 or 300 yards out, however we do it, and replacing what's been washed away. Over the long run, it seems that Mother Nature does that for us, and without the environmental issues the potential issues that we face. So I was wondering if Brianne, if you could look into it and come back to us with some kind of information, because we're spending a lot of money on this every year. The city is spending a lot of money. The Corps of Engineers is spending a lot of money. And if we're just doing more harm than good and spending millions of dollars, I think we need to address it and maybe take another look at what we're doing in this respect.
Okay.
Respectfully though, Steve, and this is Craig, can we really do anything with it? I mean, the beach renourishment is driven by the city. I mean,
no, I understand that. And I don't know that we can do anything, but we can apprise the city of of our findings, and they may take another look at it, or we could reconsider our contribution. If this is something that we don't feel is advisable, and there is information that tells us that this is something that's detrimental to the environment, to the ocean floor, and it doesn't really do anything for the beaches that isn't done naturally, then we need to make them aware and maybe revisit our contribution. We may find out that this is something that the way we're doing it is fine and we don't need to change anything. Maybe if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But on the other hand, there may be, we may be opening up an environmental Pandora's box here that we'd like to stay away from.
okay.
Erin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I remember I asked Jennifer Bastega about this, and I believe she said it's okay environmentally. I think it's worth looking into, but I don't think the environmental issues, which I care about and a lot of us care about, aren't going to override the tourism money that comes in from the beaches when they are, you know what I mean? Like when they get washed away, I mean, there's like no beach left for people to come and be on. I don't know how long the renourishment takes when it happens naturally, but I believe we probably do it for the money, that's why it's being done, right?
I think it's also to protect,
Sea
coastal
turtles.
properties too, because if you look at, property on South Beach, you have a lot of condominiums there who are already dealing with, washing of the sand on the literal movement down to Deerfield. And from what I remember, once Mother Nature takes its own course, and you may have escarpments carved out too that erode the dune line, if you allow Mother Nature to take its course. And it does take a long time for that sand to rebuild. It's certainly interesting to figure out. I'm sure that Jennifer Bastiga has probably had some questions about that. And Brianne, maybe that's where I would start with research.
And the impact on neighboring communities too. I think that's a very important thing to consider.
That's one of the things I wanted to bring up. Highland Beach does no beach renourishment. Now, again, they're not a public beach. They don't have public beaches, although I believe all their beaches are privately owned by the various condominiums and private homes in that community. But they don't devote any funds to beach renourishment, and their beaches, from what I've seen, are very nice. There may be more to that, but talking to Jennifer, doing a little investigation might not hurt.
I suspect they get their sand from Delray Beach, Steve, on the literal drift of that sand.
That could be
interesting to find out more details about.
Yeah.
I've not heard of the environmental issue being addressed before, and I'd be interested in hearing if there is such a concern.
I was under the impression, based on my reading, that it affected marine life on the ocean bed.
I have a question for Melissa, if she would, for the next meeting, give us the timelines that she sees some of these projects, when they need to be done, or if they're on the wish list, or, how she feels that we should approach these.
Like the tennis courts and those kinds of things on the.
Yes.
Okay, we'll do that.
Related to the 2019 projects completed, two questions. One is on the page 11. Was the patch reef batting cages, were they replaced as well?
They are in this current fiscal year, yes.
Okay, so they're in 2020.
Yeah, and they're done.
And they're done. Okay, that's good. And then when the other question I had is later in that same about the golf course, and I know we went through the whole issue of removing the person who was a squatter out there. Did all of I know the responsibility was left with the individual to remove what he had, and then we were to remove the remaining. Did we take down any structures, or so what's exactly out there is my question.
There's a green, I guess it's aluminum shed out there, and that's about it, right? Here's a little at the maintenance facility out at the golf course. It's that green shed, and
yeah, it's just the main thing that we own, and then there's a little shed.
There's like two in another little shed.
I have spoken to Wayne about using that as a temporary maintenance building while the first 9 holes are being constructed, so that we can save some money, because there is water, there is electricity being run out. And he feels that there would be a minimum amount of work to get it up and running again. Just temporarily.
So that's fine. If just because it's our building, then I guess someone needs to periodically go out and visit it to make sure that it's locked and that no one is using it and there's nothing bizarre going on in it. It's a little out of the way.
Out there.
On a monthly basis?
Probably more than that. Yeah. At this point, it's been a weekly or every other day basis, but she's out there frequently.
Okay, no problem. And then on the prioritization list of district-owned properties, I guess I would really encourage us to, on page 15, there's park security enhancements. I feel very strongly that as much as we possibly can do for cameras or in security, at least give a deeper presence to those entering any of the parks, that there's additional security. It would be great. And I fully support any kind of, again, cameras that can discourage things. It really is not, I don't know what level of detail we have there. I know the Boca police are pretty good about going through and giving their own assessments of things if you ask them. That's a starting point. If we haven't done that recently, is to get a full assessment and then, you know, take it one piece by piece.
Yeah, Melissa's going to chime in here with some information on that.
Okay.
Yeah, Craig, just an update. We are waiting on, I met with Greg Stevens with the city, and then Alex Keller, I know, is also working too, where they're doing, they've started doing the walkthrough at Sugar Sand Park and Swim and Racket Center, and another park they have, and they're putting together a proposal for us on where cameras will be. We gave them some prioritization of patron safety first, and then of course, patron safety as our #1 priority as we phase in stuff, and then theft prevention as a #2 priority. So they're working on a proposal currently. Actually, I'll shoot you an email on Alex, but during this time we've been shut down. I know Alex has continued to work on it because we did exchange an email where we put those priorities in. And he also talked with Leslie here at the Swim Racket Center and Kim at the Swim Racket Center to see what their thoughts were too, just to get us all on the same page and make sure that we were moving forward the way everybody thought we should. So we're working on it. It's not there yet, but we're definitely working on a proposal and a phase-in plan to handle those with priorities.
Melissa, there many years ago we talked about doing these enhancements, and there was a problem with connectivity. So is that still present at Sugar Sand?
It's actually, if it is, it will be addressed because it's actually the IT people that are walking through with them as well for the cameras. So they'll be taking a look at all of those and the weaknesses have and what we have what we need infrastructure wise to make all of this happen as well. That will be a part of the evaluation. And there was some money set aside for some phasing parts of it to start this year, but we want to get that plan together first.
Okay, thank you, Melissa.
Date on where it's at, so maybe I can have an update for you next meeting to see exactly where we are.
Okay, I'm going to put that in my future agenda items.
You know, in that same spirit, I really would not object to, and I don't know why we never really did the FP&L proposal of, it was kind of an environmental solar type trees and things like that. Yeah, I mean, we kind of, it was put off. It kind of got put off, but it kind of bakes into the whole thing, and it would look nice at the science exploratorium over there. But it's about having a stronger internet, and you do need that for the security cameras. So they all kind of go hand in hand.
Leanne?
Part of the problem with the Florida Power and Light solar thing at this exploring was that there's so much shade over at Sugar Sand, there's so much tree. They need a very wide opening to work, so it wasn't going to work there. It is something we can look at by the ball fields. At the time, they want use of the land for that, and at the time it wasn't advised, but we can certainly look at it again and have Jacob review some of the old agreements that they had sent and see if they're what he thinks, and maybe he's done it at other cities too. We can send that to Jacob to look at.
I don't know that I would do it right away unless Aaron or others feel strongly. I think as long as you have the other things, or maybe a higher priority list, but I wouldn't lose sight of it.
Okay.
Well, here's my suggestion for our June 1st meeting. I think we all should cite our priorities and bring them to the next meeting, and
okay.
We're all on the same page. We probably will be. We're pretty much in agreement. So if you want to put that on the June 1st meeting and study this a little bit further, ask Melissa and Brianne questions. I certainly have a few, and then Melissa also get these other priorities out for us.
I think what we need to do is to understand the need of some of these things that are on the district-owned properties. What's the timeline, for instance, when to replace the field house flooring? What is that timeline?
We can put those together.
Yeah, I think that'd be important. And then under city-owned properties, I mean, there's some ticket items here. Bless you.
Bless you.
There's some
Thank
big
you.
ticket items on here that we haven't really bought into yet, not the least of which is the Spanish River and the DeHarnley Park maintenance facilities. So a lot of this is going to be budget driven, and the uncertainty of what our ad valorem revenue is going to look like after this pandemic gets through with us. So I'm not sure how you go about talking about the city-owned properties without some input from them. I know they're ready to move ahead with some of these with these two buildings, and I'm not sure that we're ready to or financially able to contribute resources that they're asking for.
Okay.
Steve, did you have any comments?
No, I'm going to save them for next meeting when we discuss our pet projects. I will say that one of the things that we need to prioritize, probably put first and foremost, are the projects at Gumbo Limbo, because they've been sitting for a long time, and we don't seem to be getting anywhere. I'd like to at least, and I know we have talked about putting things out to bid, et cetera, but especially when it comes to the replacement for the tower, I'd really like to get moving on that. But as far as the other projects, I would like to, I'll hold my tongue till next time.
Okay. Aaron? You're muted.
Oh, I was just going to say nothing this time. We'll talk about it next time.
Okay, good. All right. Brianne, do you have anything else to contribute on this?
No.
Okay, let's move to the next item, the DeHornley Lighting Project. Brianne?
Okay, page 16 in your agenda packets is a request for $18,850. It's actually going to be transferred from unexpended capital funds. So the city is not requesting any additional money in our budget. What this does is replaces the heads of the parking lot lights at DeHornley Park with LED lighting, which will be more sustainable and also more economical. And so looking tonight for a motion to approve $18,850.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the request for lighting there at the parking lot. And I might add, it pays to wait, because the first time this came up, it was substantially more dollars than this. So, and I'm all in favor of the lighting to take place there, and that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question, Brianne.
Yes.
Is this going to be turtle friendly? Even, I know it's west, but it's ambient lighting.
I'll verify. I'm sure they ran it through their sustainability manager, but I'll verify just to make sure.
Okay. Any other discussion, commissioners?
No, as I will say, the new lighting, the LED lighting, is really directional. So not only is it brighter and greater, it really puts a lot of direction on it. But your question about turtle friendly, Susie, is important, because some of them are big globes that look like the sun. Yeah. And they really should be downward facing. And if anything should be done over at Spanish River Park, they have globes with old lighting in it. Those should be done as well. And we should all support that one, because they could make that lighting much better.
Spanish River is at our park, so.
Understand. Encourage them to do all their other parks.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? JoAnn, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ernst?
Yes.
Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright? Commissioner Wright?
You're on mute.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you, JoAnn. Number 4, boardroom safety precautions. Brianne.
Okay. What was in your agenda packet starting on page 17 is boardroom safety precautions, and Melissa spent a lot of time putting these options together, and you can see them laid out there. Another option we have is using the Willow Theater at Sugar Sand. And Jacob can talk a little bit about where we're at with our virtual meetings and when we can anticipate having to go back to live meetings. But when we do go back to live meetings, an option that we do have for us to use is the Willow Theater, which would give us space on the stage to social distance all of you. We've ordered masks that we can encourage the general public to wear when they come back to our meetings. We can set up the theater with 6 feet between each seat, so we'll tape off certain seats, and staff, the theater staff and ushers can assist as well, since we fund those positions. I think as long as we can stay on Zoom meetings, we will not continue that. I think everybody's been in agreement with that. But once we do have to go back to meeting in person, the theater is another option that we already have that building, and it's we're already paying the staff over there. So it could be a way to bridge the gap until we go back to whatever normal is.
Jacob, would you like to explain how some of the other communities are doing their meetings?
Sure, just a couple of comments and observations. We're currently statewide in the phase 1 reopening plan, and under the governor's order, we are currently allowed to continue with these virtual meetings. A quorum is not required to be physically present in order to conduct public business. Earlier in the month, about a week or two ago, the governor's task force published a plan for Florida's recovery. And within that plan, it includes a reopening of local government meetings as part of phase 2. 2 things are unknown. One, when the governor will implement phase 2, and whether that implementation will include a requirement that meetings be conducted as normal. In other words, where a quorum is physically present. When that occurs, we'll have a couple options. One is to continue having our meetings at the Swim and Racket Center in our regular meeting room. And I know that Brianne had a couple of proposals that would enable us to have meetings in our regular meeting room. The other option would be to meet over in the Willow Theater, which is a bigger space. Irrespective of when phase 2 occurs and local government, and we need to return to our normal meetings, I suspect that social distancing and separation will still be part of that requirement. So there may be more room for us to spread out and for the public to spread out in a room like the Willow Theater. Different cities, different local governments are handling the current situation differently. This is now, I believe, our 3rd virtual meeting where we've had the Zoom function where the board is all accessing remotely. Some local governments, some cities are using this exact platform or this exact process. There are other cities and other local governments where the board members, the commissioners, are meeting physically at City Hall or at their meeting place, but the public is not included. And in those meetings, the people who are physically present are appropriately distanced throughout the room, and the public has the right of access, much like we have now, where they can call in or dial in or submit their comments by email in advance of the meeting. When we do need to return to some semblance of normal, the board would need to decide whether we want to have our meetings at our normal meeting room. And I know that there's been talk about putting up partitions on the dais to provide separation. There's also been talk about using whether it's tables in the boardroom or in Willow Theater where the board can be more spaced out and the public can be more spaced out. But without knowing the timing, it's a little difficult to weigh in as to when we might need to go down this path. At least in the short term, I suspect we'll be able to use this current platform. But once we get a better indication as to when the governor is going to proceed with phase 2 reopening of the state, we may need to revisit how we want to move forward with our future meetings.
Thank you, Jacob. Commissioners, we had a phone call with Jacob this afternoon, and he suggested the possibility of sending a letter to the governor just asking if we could extend the virtual meetings for a bit of time, given the fact that 3 of us are at risk with our age, and possibly, getting his ear that way, or to just go ahead with whatever he has to say. So I'd love to hear what you want to go forward with. Steve?
Well, for me, I think the best way to go is to use Willow Theater. To go through the expense and the time of setting up plexiglass barriers, both in front and on the side of each commissioner. We're talking about something that's going to be temporary. I can't I'm praying to God that this is not something that 2 years down the road, we're all still walking around with masks and trying to stay 6 feet apart from each other. So I would rather see something that really doesn't change any of the makeup of any of the facilities that we use. So I'd be in favor of setting up tables at the Willow Theater, maybe closing off every other seat, the commissioners accessing the facility through the stage entrance. I think that might work out the best. And for issues, you know, for meetings where we're going to have a larger crowd, I think that would work better rather than try and set out spaces between each chair over at the Swim and Racket Club. I just think overall it works out better and it's the least intrusive.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I echo what Steve has had to say. Hopefully we won't be under this pandemic for too much longer than necessary, but I think having it at the Willow Theater gives us the opportunity to have more of the public involved rather than having a very limited number at at our chambers there at the Swim and Racket. At least you can, because the Willow Theater will hold, what, 150 people. So you could probably easily get people with the appropriate distance, 30 to 40 people in there. And that's probably more than what we might expect unless we're doing the budgeting process. And I want to hear and see the public. And just from my recollection, most of the public that comes to these meetings are people in the same risk category as Steve and I.
And me too.
I think giving this the adequate space and making it available so that they could attend our meetings, because I think it's important for them to hear our deliberations. But there may be some people who can't because they don't have the IT resources that most of us seem to have. And I like that idea better than setting up a little bank teller cubicles in our commission rooms, because I'm hopeful that this pandemic, they'll come up with a vaccine that will be successful in combating it, or some type of treatment that'll make it less of an issue than it currently is.
Thank
so
you.
that's my recommendation. And I'll do these virtual meetings as long as we possibly can.
Thank you. Erin?
Yeah, I was just going to say I would much prefer to try to extend the virtual meeting as long as possible. My husband is back at work now, so he is a frontline worker and possibly being exposed, who knows? So I would hate to give it to one of you and not know it. So if we can extend it as much as possible, and then the Willow Theater makes much more sense. The in and out of Swim and Racket there's only one way in and one way out, and that's a very small hallway. So it just makes more sense, I think.
Thank you. Craig?
I second what's already been said. Willow Theater makes a lot of sense. Hopefully this will go away soon. And I think this has worked out fine. So if we can, my personal opinion is if whoever wants to continue Zoom, we should continue it for them, and it's fine with me, and those who want to go in can go in. So it's maybe a combination, but continue it as long as the governor's orders are out there. And if you want to have a letter to the governor that encouraging Zoom, I think that's fine too.
Well, I heard something today and the elevator is what has me concerned, is that the virus can last in its contained spot up to 17 minutes. So, somebody gets in the elevator and it's not just having one or two people in there at a time. I mean, and that's going to limit people who can't use the stairs. So the longer we can do the Zoom, and I like the Willow Theater. Brianne always comes up with good ideas to keep us all safe and happy.
I think it was a group effort with Melissa and JoAnn. We were
Okay.
and this is really complicated.
And Melissa, thank you very much for all the work you did. It really, there's a lot that went into that, but I like the idea of being able to have more people involved in these meetings as far as the public goes. So do we need a motion on that, Jacob, for anything? I don't think so, do we?
No, just consensus and direction to the executive director.
Okay. Leanne, do you have your...
Got it.
Okay. We have the Ocean Breeze pickleball discussion. Melissa, would you like to give us your input, please?
Yes, Commissioners, on, sorry, I'm getting to it myself, on page 7, I did, for your benefit, per your direction last meeting, looked into the potential cost of the pickleball courts. And I will say that these could be pickleball or tennis, whichever the direction of the board wants to be, or it could be a combination of both, whichever. The cost would really not change because the cost of resurfacing the surface is just the cost of resurfacing them. So anyhow, you'll see a chart on page 47 that breaks down some of the costs. When the gentleman came out and took a look at the courts, there's 6 tennis courts, regulation size tennis courts on site right now. And the first tennis court is in pretty bad shape. It would really need to be torn up and completely redone. The rest of them we could resurface, put a fiberglass cover on them like we did at Patrick Park and resurface them. So that's where you'll see that the first expense of the $65,000 is what it would take to resurface with fiberglass the 5 tennis courts out there. And then the next one of $34,000 is what it would cost to tear up the one that's in the worst condition. And unfortunately, it's the very first one you would come to at there. So everybody would have to walk past that court to get to the rest. So we can't really just fence that court off and not do it. Now, there are some things we could do if we wanted to, is instead of resurfacing it, we could take it, tear it up, and just put rock down there and just let it be leveled out with rock. And that would save some expense. So that is, when you look at item number 2 and 3 on there, that's an either or, that's not a both. And that's why you'll see the total down there, if that makes sense. So just, it's there for your review and for direction and any questions you may have.
Thank you, Melissa. What was the thing with the rock? I mean, is that for the parking?
No, the rock would be is if you wanted to save even additional cost, instead of item number 1 and 2 on this list, you could go in there and just take that first court off and level lime rock across there without re-asphalting it, and that would be even less expensive than these 2 options here.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Commissioners, do you have some questions for Melissa? Commissioner Engel.
No, I think it's pretty cut and dried. I would like to know, however, what the difference would be without doing anything with that 6th court. In other words, just putting rock down.
Melissa?
I don't know the cost of that offhand.
Okay. Yeah, if you could find out, that's what I'm partial to right now, because if it saves another, and I'm just guessing, another $4,000 or $5,000, because I'm seeing here 16 courts, 65,000 asphalt. Well, save more than that. If we
the only
didn't,
thing I would warn a little bit about on Steve on that would be, you know, with these courts, the way they would be laid out, we would put them out there and we really wouldn't have somebody out there every day watching them. And there is, you know how kids can be, and there's tons of kids in that neighborhood, trust me, because I spent a lot of time out there over this breakdown with trying to keep those as secure as we can, the whole area. And I'm concerned that those rocks would end up on the courts and somebody could trip and fall on them if they weren't properly swept off, etc.
gotcha.
I'm afraid there could be some liability issues there.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is option number 2, remove court, level with on-side rock, and re-asphalt to provide black surface area would be the way to go.
That's the most economical of those 2 options.
Okay.
When we discussed this at the last meeting, the parks were not open. And now that they are, is it still a great need? And do you still have a desire to do this?
Madam Chairman.
I have some, sorry, go ahead, Bob.
Go ahead, Aaron. Ladies
Well, I
first.
just had some questions. Because I know that when I drive by here, those courts are already not super close to the road, but close enough to the road. And moving them down this close to the road with no high fence, I mean, balls could potentially be hit onto the road if they were shifted this far south, it looks like. And I'm wondering why we went from 6 courts to 16. Why are we making it so many courts to have so many? So my thing was, it was just a place for a few people to come to be able to play a little bit of pickleball or tennis or whatever from the neighborhood. This seems like a lot of courts to be putting here with no oversight or anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Aaron Levy, a couple of comments. We're really relocating. That red line that you see there is the current fence line of those courts. So what they did is they just did a Google Earth so they could superimpose over there what we could do. At the time of when I discussed this with him, I asked him to get us as many courts as we could, because my thought was I did not think that the commissioners, that the board would like the appearance of having some courts fixed and looking well, and then some courts looking unkept. And also the possibility that if we did that and then more people came out and those unkept courts were there, would they try to go ahead and play on them still? And would that cause an issue for us? What I will say is, if you wanted to reduce the number, obviously we could take the 65, divide it by the 16, and find out approximately how much it would cost per court to resurface to get a lower number if you want, and then we could just accommodate. The reason why it went to 16 courts, those are all pickleball courts, and you can get more pickleball courts on one tennis court. So that's 16 pickleball courts. That's what will fit.
Okay. So my thing was, I thought we were just kind of keeping what was there, resurfacing and doing it as cheap as possible, just as a place for people to come from this local neighborhood to play here. I didn't think we were doing 16 pickleball courts, because that's going to be, I have a feeling, a scheduling nightmare and a people nightmare if we put 16 brand new pickleball courts here. I just thought we were doing resurfacing these tennis courts that were here, putting some pickleball lines as an option, and keeping it minimal. You know what I mean?
I can do whatever direction you want. That's what I was mentioning. Is I asked him, if you're going to resurface some of the courts and not all of them, then you're going to have, and it doesn't matter to me, I'll go whatever direction the board would like us to go in, but if you're going to resurface some of them, then we got to figure out, what would you like to do with the ones we don't resurface? Would you like to just fence those off?
No, I meant resurface all of them, but just as tennis courts. Just
okay,
these ones that are
fine. That does
currently
not
here.
affect the cost though. Because if you're resurfacing, you're resurfacing.
It doesn't affect the cost at all.
The only thing it would take out is a 4-foot high fence in between.
Okay, so that's $16,000 though. Right?
That's if you did all tennis. If you put some pickleball out there, you would need to separate pickleball from tennis with some fence. So
go
ahead, I'm sorry.
One question. At my tennis courts here at Hidden Valley, we have lines for pickleball and there's no fencing in between them. They're just there for people to play pickleball.
Aaron, is that at Hidden Valley? The one you're talking about? Okay.
Yeah.
You ever see anybody there playing pickleball?
Yes, all the time.
Okay.
If we had 16 courts and we had 4 people on a court, that's 64 people. That's a lot.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah. Bob,
Well, that's why. I was just going to say, that's why I thought we were just doing
it's
these
whatever you guys would like to do. The cost of resurfacing that square area is here. It doesn't matter. We can lessen the number of courts, no problem.
Okay.
Question though.
Commissioner Rollins has the floor. He was asking.
Okay.
Sorry, Greg.
Go ahead.
The concern I have is the size and scope of the number, turning this into a destination that we're going to have a hard time changing. If we decide to, if we're able to move forward with the golf course, which we are, we hadn't planned on anything but golf over there at the facility. We looked at designs for tennis and we kind of moved past that. Now there may be a spot over there, but I haven't heard a big hue and cry recently from the pickleball group. And I don't know what the demand is that I'd want to spend this amount of money for a short period of time. And if and this has also served as a staging area too. The parking lot was when we had some work done over there with FP&L. I'm just, I went back and forth on whether I like the idea of making this available. If we invest the money in resurfacing, and as Aaron said, there's a lot of kids in the area, what better surface is there for skateboards and rollerblades and in that area out there, which it's unsupervised. And I'm just not sure that I can support spending this kind of money for a short-term fix. And then once we do this, are we creating an unintended consequence of having to, if we were to take this away, having to put it into the design of the golf course just by the fact that we've taken an amenity away from the community and now they want it back in there. I think I'm going to sit this one out, quite honestly.
Craig? You're muted.
Yep, there you go. First question for Melissa is the 5 tennis courts there. Is that green from the Google Earth picture there? Is that, you're saying that's all cement, or is that just the tennis courts are cement?
That's all tennis court material.
So even the green area is not grass, it's cement all around.
Correct. The area, the red is the exterior fence. Well, I only say that because the courts 1 and 16, the fence goes down, but the red is essentially the fence. It's around the courts that are currently there, and everything inside that is, in fact, playing surface.
Okay. Okay, I see.
Yeah, looking at this again, the points that Aaron brought up and that Bob brought up, Aaron's point about proximity to a highway, and the problem we'll have once we start construction on the course, it may not be worthwhile to invest $100,000, which is what it's going to be one way or the other, on a temporary facility that there's already, we heard one communication from someone in the neighborhood, from Barbara Chaffee, I believe it was, who thought it wasn't a great idea. Maybe we might be stirring up a hornet's nest where we don't have to.
I agree with what you're saying, Steve. I would not want to spend $100,000 for this. I think when we initially started it, it was, we took down, we're trying to prevent people from playing on the courts.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back here for a second. I think the first thing is the conversation with the city is how long will it be for approval on the golf design, and when it's approved, then what? So what's the time frame? So my thought was that, look, if the golf course is not going to be done on this site for 2 years, you might as well make good use of it. But I wouldn't spend $100,000 to fix it up. So if it was, something under 50, yeah, then I would consider that might be worthwhile. It'll get some good use out of 2 years, but even that's kind of high. So the thought process, 16 courts is a lot. That's really making it into a pickleball center there, and probably more than what we want to do at this point in time. But maybe the better approach is to focus on the city and what is the timeline for their approval and where are we going with it, okay? And so we have our own budget discussion that's going to be right upon us. And at that point, we have to think about, different scenarios of how much do we have to fund and what are we going to fund going forward. What I do think is meaningful in doing is cleaning up the site that you're going to have to do anyway. And I do think is meaningful is putting an irrigation system in. I think it's just, you know, someone pointed out earlier that we put in plants for different areas and there's no irrigation. So it sure would be nice to at least, you know, clear out the hotel site, put in grass, but I don't want to put in grass if it's going to die. You really need to have the irrigation with it. That I think may have to be coordinated with the city, you know, a short-term and a long-term plan. If our long-term vision is everything we've said we were going to do, let's stick with it. I'm all on board. But how long is long-term? And did it change with, you know, this whole COVID-19 thing? You know, we're starting to wrap up some of our big projects, so we'll know where we stand. I think we'll also know where we stand with the pumps and piping project. So maybe when they go through the RFP process, it becomes a little cheaper and there's some more money available, and then this can go faster. So I'm sorry that we brought it too forward for a big thing, but maybe the conversation is go back, let Brianne have a conversation with Mike Wika, get a gauge of the city council for what they think on the short and the long-term plan. And if the golf course out west is going forward as a sale, then I think we need to be dedicated to getting the golf course in the east started. And that's a higher priority both for the city and for us.
Greg, well said. I agree with you. And I think a higher priority of spending our money in that four corners is not the tennis courts, but to improve the appearance of it, because it is been looking so bad for so long. I feel bad for the neighbors. I'd rather spend the $100,000 or the $50,000 on cleaning up the hotel site and making that area more attractive. And like you said, if we're going to put sod down, we need to irrigate it so that it does look presentable, because that's representing us. And I sent a email to Brianne that I'm on this neighborhood, I forget what you call it. It's a chat box that talks
the
about
next door.
Next door. Thank you, Craig.
Yep.
And this lady was talking about the entrance to Boca Chica off of Yamato and how desolate that looks, and what can be done to improve that. I think we have some housekeeping we need to take care of in there before we spend for all recreational purposes on these tennis courts.
Then maybe that's something we should move forward with.
Yep, I agree.
Well, one option though, can we, instead of looking at sod and irrigation, can we look at other options in terms of like xeriscaping or something else that might be an option that doesn't require irrigation and more water?
I think, Aaron, you're spot on. Whatever we can do that is more pleasing to the eye than what we have there now, xeriscape or whatever. So it could be landscaped and it could look really nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this project originally got started for the safety because people were out there playing on an unsafe surface, but maybe there's a way to put a fence up that they can't easily, climb over the fence. Or I think we need to have Melissa look into something to keep the neighborhood safe. And since there are other pickleball courts in the area, I don't think that spending $100,000. Well, that's better than none.
I mean, I'm just curious though, there's no way to just clean these up and people were playing on them before. Is there just no way? I mean, they don't have to be, 100% flat surface, perfect tennis courts. You know what I mean?
Brianne,
I don't know.
That's the tough part about that, Aaron, I'm sorry, is you're right. They're just sitting out there, but about the time that we go out there and we open up and make it so people can go in and there's cracks and they fall, then we become liable for that because we're responsible for maintaining if we put them up there. So, it's not, I'm in agreement with you guys. It's more money than we thought because the one was in worse condition than we thought. If we could have gone out there and just resurfaced the 6 courts that are out there, forget about the 16 court number for pickleball right now, because that doesn't matter. We could make that number be as low as you guys want. But at the end of the day, we'd have to pay to resurface that whole same area, regardless of how many courts we made. So we could make 4 courts, and but we'd still have to resurface it all. So there's where, so originally we were thinking it would essentially be the $65,000. But when we got out there and had somebody really take a look at it, there was that one tennis court that is in really bad shape that we would have to address. And that's what caused the price to go up.
Can't we just put a sign up that says enter and play at your own risk? We are not liable. Would that cover us there, Jacob?
It would help. I mean, signage always helps in the context of trying to mitigate any potential risk. It may not eliminate risk, but it might help.
Would that be of any benefit if there were juveniles that were injured, Jake?
It may not. It may depend on who your audience actually is. I mean, again, signage and providing the appropriate warnings and necessary warnings to invitees and others who are using our facilities is certainly a step in the right direction. But again, depending on the age and other considerations regarding who we're appealing to, might have some impact on that discussion.
I also heard that there was drinking of adult beverages there, and is there a way we could incorporate that in the signage that, no alcoholic beverages, or to limit our liability?
Again, we can certainly put that in the sign, and I would encourage you to do that. But again, if you're engaging in an unlawful activity, drinking in public or drinking in a public park, there may be other codes that are being violated there. There may be other enforcement opportunities. So we just need to be vigilant and be made aware. And if we need to take appropriate enforcement action through PD or otherwise, we need to know in order to take that action.
Yeah, it strikes me the word to describe this facility as an attractive nuisance, which creates liability issues. And I think having it, unless it can be managed to a safe level, I wouldn't want people using the facility, even with a use at your own risk sign up there. I just don't think that's going to give you enough cover.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Commissioners, do you want to direct Melissa to look into the xeriscaping and cleaning up these areas, and asking Brianne to check with the city about us being able to do the irrigation, since it is their property on the west side?
Yeah, I would be in favor of getting more information on that, because I think we do need to start being good stewards of that property and improving the appearance.
I would agree.
Yeah.
So let's call it a threefold step. The first step is just to have a conversation with the city about where are they going, what's the time frame on it, so we get a better understanding from them if we can get anything out of them on that front. The second phase priority is to clean up the hotel site or any areas that are in the public nuisance area. And then the third thing, I guess I'm open for if and maybe it's just simply not possible, something a little bit lower key, lower expense on the pickleball side, if it was doable, but it doesn't, right now it doesn't sound like something, but if something magically came up that was not too expensive and we find out that we're on hold for a couple years, then I would say it's worthy of putting it out there, because I don't like the idea of us fencing off an area to prevent people from doing activities. Just facilitate it and put up the signs as mentioned.
Yeah.
As long as it can be done safely, I think.
If it can be, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and therein lies the problem. What can be done safely and with a minimum of supervision? So, you're going to have kids that are going to skateboard there. You're going to have people who are going to decide that nighttime, when they can't see anything, is the best time to play pickleball or tennis. And a few people who might have a few adult beverages and think that. I agree with you, Craig, that it's not a good thing to have to fence off property and keep people out. But I think in this case, maybe that may be the best way to go.
But they could walk out onto the golf course and do something dangerous, can't they? We can't block off the whole. Say that again?
A car out there, somebody said today.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Somebody somebody is driving a car out on the golf course, and according to the guy who does our mowing, if they create too many more ruts, he's not going to be able to get his tractor out there to keep mowing the lawn because of the ruts, or the golf course, not the lawn. So there's an issue there too.
Well, then we just need to get the city start looking at our design and giving us some input so that we can decide what we're going to do. I think that's where we are, and that's what Greg was saying, is that, you know, if you're still in favor of doing it, let's get an answer from the city on our design so we know, because going into the budget period, we need to have that answer so we can make plans to get this course developed.
Leanne?
And
Go ahead, Erin.
well, I was just going to say, in terms of the four corners, that did you want to keep up that fencing, the green fencing that's still there, or are we planning on taking that down, or?
Well, I think it remains to be seen what we can do as far as, you know, if we can get the irrigation going, then we have to look at things from that perspective. So we need, like Craig and Bob have said, we need to get into this conversation with the city and see if they're going to approve the design. And if not, why not? And then we can go forward with our other plans. Brianne, would you reach out to Mike Weka and see where they are? And see if we can get on the agenda, you know, that topic can get on the agenda for a city council meeting.
Sure will. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. I think it's time for Mr. Ernst to shine on page 49 of the agenda for the approval of the invoices.
Yes. Madam Chair, included in this cycle of invoices are 3 payments to the city for operations and maintenance. So the total amount that is payable for invoices, including payroll, is $4,375,560.60. I'd like to make a motion.
Put that in the form of a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion for approval of invoices of $4,375,560.60.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. I do have one question on the payment to the Oregon Museum. Do we have any, how do I want to put that?
You don't have a pandemic clause.
We don't have a pandemic clause. So regardless, we don't have an out clause at all with this.
Well, this one was here. We can look at our future agreements. I'll have Jacob look at them and see what our options are.
Okay. Okay.
Could we not get this to fall under force majeure and void the contract in that case? Because it is, I don't know whether it's not a hurricane or a fire or other calamity, but it seems like, when was that, I was thinking the same thing as Sue, is when is that program supposed to arrive here for, setup?
For Design Zone?
Yes,
I'll
correct.
check the dates. I'm sure that the Exploring will be opening soon, but I will find out and we'll check our other agreements to see what our options are.
It says 1/22/21 through 4.
There you go. So January through April.
We should be, hopefully we'll be out of the woods by then.
Okay, yes. Is there any other discussion, commissioners?
Only on that one, on the Oregon, that's the same one that we ordered the last one from, correct?
We order a lot from them, yes.
Yeah, so I guess I would propose, if you could talk to them, just to move everything 3 months. That would be the ideal thing. You know, maybe, I mean, if we already, because we lost the benefit of this March through May. You know, would they be just like a rent? You know, people are asking people to defer rent or tack it on to the end. Can they do something for us? We work with them. I'd go more on the approach. We work with them an awful lot, and we're nonprofit like they, and would like some flexibility.
Well, they're also for the summer,
city programming too. So I'd have to see how that would impact any kind of like field trips that they have next year and things like that. I'd have to look at how their programming would be impacted by that.
Wait, Craig, you want to delay it being set up from January up 3 months?
Well, we need to give something back, I think, don't we? So I'd like to keep what we have a little bit longer if we could. I'd like to get some flexibility. We lost 3 months of use. I'm looking for 3 months of use some way or how.
Well, is something else coming in? Something's here now.
Well, the summers, there usually isn't an exhibit because they have there's typically summer camps. So something would be moving out in May, and then they would have the summer off because they use those rooms for science camp.
Right, and then does something come in the fall?
In the fall, yes.
So
But
we
not
have
this one, a different one.
Yeah, I think it's the, with the mosquitoes and I forget what it was called, but I'll look at it and see what we have and see if they can adjust. But every adjustment impacts the exploring and field trips and all those things that they plan for.
Is the one that's coming in the fall, is that Oregon Museum too?
I don't know.
Well, I think going
I mean,
forward,
I would just
to,
keep this one where it is for now. I wouldn't delay it 3 months because we don't know. I mean, that throws the Science Museum way off, doesn't it? I mean, that means it's going to be pushed in the summer, which they don't have anything in the summer.
No, that'd be
next year. Yeah, they won't do an exhibit in the summer.
that would be a good thing though to have it for the next 3 months because you got nothing in there and there is no summer camp.
To get it earlier.
No, this is next year.
Keep what you have today is what I'm asking for.
Oh, I'll see what they have. I will look into that and find out and report back.
Oh, okay.
good idea. Is there any other discussion? JoAnn, would you do a roll call vote for the approval of the payroll and invoices, please?
Sure. Commissioner Ernst?
Yes.
Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang?
Yes.
Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, JoAnn. Commissioners, we are now to the reports and discussion items. Executive Director Harms is first.
I only have two items. The banking RFP we wanted to discuss tonight. We'll just schedule it for the first meeting in June and finalize it. We had anticipated hearing back about something, but I have not yet. So I'll talk to Commissioner Ernst and hopefully we can just finish and wrap that up for the next meeting. I'm still waiting to hear back from the city as far as a date that we can anticipate getting their budget from them, but usually we have it this month, so I'm anticipating getting it soon. I know it's gone through the third floor level and it's just waiting to come to us. And then my last item is a schedule for staff. We put together a schedule for the three of us here where we won't overlap minimally. I guess when Melissa and I are here for meetings, we overlap, but we are using our masks and mostly practicing social distancing. And so we will keep that up and the schedule is out. And if we make adjustments along the way, I'll pass those along, certainly to the chair and anybody else as it happens. And that's it.
Thank you. District Council, Mr. Horowitz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing to report this evening.
Okay. Commissioners, I'll start with Mr. Engel.
I am good.
Okay. Commissioner Wright?
No, I was just going to say, with the scheduling of the staff and with everything how it is right now, I would be supportive of staff staying home and doing work as much as possible as well, though, because I know Brianne has a child at home and I think JoAnn looks after her mom and things like that. So I think it would be super important to give them as much flexibility as possible, especially with the limited summer camps and not wanting to send your child to summer camp or daycare or anything like that. So I would be super supportive of, and I think we haven't skipped a beat in terms of getting work done. So I don't think that's any worry. So I think we should be really supportive of the work from home, like Twitter, right? You can work from home forever and ever and ever.
That's right. Twitter did that.
So I'm supportive of that, and I don't feel like there's a need. If there's not a need for them to come in, then I don't see why we would force them to come in.
And they have been working very hard from home, if not harder than going into the office, because they don't have the distractions of people coming into the office and sitting down and wanting to talk to them. So I totally agree with you, Erin. I think it's a great idea to help.
Although it might be more torture being home than coming into the office. I see Jake's in the office trying to get away, right? But I think it's just safer. you know?
It's a whole new world. Commissioner Rollins?
I'm just waiting on Mr. Ingles' motion.
Well, we need to hear from Mr. Ernst.
Yeah, we have a couple more.
Yeah, I know, but I'm still waiting to hear his motion.
Craig, do you have anything?
Yes, unfortunately, I do have one item, Madam Chair, and I guess I'd bring it to the attention of our board that the county has lifted all beach from sunrise to sunset. And so, you know, effective 12/1 on May 18th, that's available. And yet the city of Boca Raton and I appreciate their abundance of caution on things. The dog parks have remained closed. And to my understanding, there is no priority to open the dog parks. And I've heard some complaints that this is a dog park thing. Leanne, go ahead.
It's opening, as well as the skate park tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay, good.
Yeah,
I think that's important. I believe the dog parks, if I didn't hear that, that's news to me that it is opening, so I'm pleased with that. The second part of it, though, is for those people who do go to the beach, to be able to park at the beach. And so their beaches may be open to walk on, but they're not allowing anyone to park at the beach. So do you have any news on that?
No.
So I guess I would request formally that we send a letter to the city requesting that they open the beaches for parking to those, and they can restrict it to people with parking passes. But I, for one, don't appreciate the fact that they have the parks closed. There's really no one there. They're in a little booth there, and they can limit a lot of the activity anyway. So that forces people to park on the side of the road. That forces people to park illegally in other areas. I think they can control it. I'd just like to see them effectively use the parking. I pay for an annual parking pass for 3 cars, or 2 of the 3 cars, I should say. And I would appreciate that the parking be opened at the beaches and managed in a reasonable, way.
My concern with what they did, though, like they did the opposite of what Delray did. They didn't restrict any of the what people could do at the beach. So for Boca, you can go and bring a towel and a chair and sit down. Versus Delray, they opened up the parking, but they restricted the use of the beach to walking and exercising and swimming, which I think makes a lot more sense. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you allow people to bring towels and chairs, they're going to sit and they're going to congregate in groups of however many. So I agree with you. I think that opening the parking to permit to residents and district residents makes sense, but I think they need to restrict some of, what's happening. And I don't think there's lifeguards out there to,
No,
there's no lifeguards, and I think they're trying to stop, like Aaron was saying, Broward and Dade aren't opening until Memorial Weekend, so I think they're trying to limit.
Well, I, for one, disagree with waiting till Memorial Day weekend. If you want to have a mad herd of people going over there, that's what you'll get. All I'm suggesting is that I guess I'd like us to encourage our city leaders to reconsider the parking at the beaches and to ensure that if you say the dog parks are opening tomorrow, that's great. But if not, and there's a change of heart, I'd like to be sure that the dog parks do open. It doesn't seem like that takes a lot of effort to do that.
Dogs can get COVID too,
Greg.
I realize that, but we can't live in a bubble. I mean, I haven't seen too many of these dogs get COVID, and we have
They announced that the dog park and the skate park are opening tomorrow.
Okay.
Craig, are you making a motion to do this?
If it needs a motion, I'd say I'll make a motion that we have our executive director write a letter to the city requesting that they open the Boca Raton beaches for parking when appropriately managed as they see fit to mitigate with guidance from the CDC and everyone else.
Okay,
I would prefer to have it open for just residents, though, not for anybody.
Open for park, yes, permitted. People who have residents who purchased a permit.
Do I hear a second?
Aren't you going to second me, Aaron?
Well,
all that and you let me hanging dry?
I have my opinion on it, but I also think that we should allow the city to make the choices that they're making in terms of the fact that it's their beach. And I think it will open in due time. And, you know, I think we don't have beaches that are super crowded right now, which I think is a good thing. So,
Okay, since we
sorry.
have a second, that one died on the vine. Do you have anything else, Craig?
Nope, that's it.
I have one thing. I have been talking to people who can't afford to pay their rent, their or their mortgage, their car insurance, their credit card bills. So that raised a red flag with me that possibly come November, they won't be able to pay their real estate taxes. So I came up with a thought and ran it by Jacob and Brianne to send a letter to the property appraiser's office and the tax collector's office to possibly consider doing the real estate taxes in installments rather than a big chunk in November, and then, you know, perhaps they'll just let it go by the wayside. But if we could, you know, if they would make it into a, you know, smaller amounts, maybe some people could afford to go ahead and pay their real estate taxes, and it wouldn't impact our budget as much as if they didn't pay at all.
What happens when somebody doesn't pay their real estate taxes, just out of curiosity?
Jacob, would you weigh in on that? We discussed that with Sam the other day.
Or yeah, there's a mechanism called a tax deed where if property taxes go unpaid, the property appraiser's office, the tax collector, will sell what are known as tax deeds. And there's a cottage industry where people buy tax deeds. And when a property is sold, ultimately they recover some amount of that cost. So that the taxes can become attached to the property in the form of these deeds. And ultimately the property owner is responsible to pay those taxes, or they're paid by a third party through the acquisition of these deeds, which then have value that are sold on the open market as it's not dissimilar to a foreclosure, but it's through the sale of tax deeds.
It was just a thought. You know, we can explore that further, and we can look into it, and you can think about it. But it would just, you know, be something that to make our constituents understand that we feel for them, and we understand that they have their issues, and we still want our tax money, but maybe there's a better way for them to be able to pay their taxes if they need to.
Would it be an option just like for anybody to do it, or do you have to go through like a process of showing hardship or, you know, whatever? Because I would hate it for somebody who owns a $10 million property who can absolutely afford to pay their property taxes and then go ahead and do installments or whatever. You know what I mean?
Good point. Very good point. Well, just think about it, and I might bring it up again. So I just wanted people to think that, you know, we aren't the hard-hearted tax collectors here in Boca Raton. Our future agenda items are the banking and the security cameras. Is there anything else that you'd like to discuss at the next meeting on June 1st virtually? Bob?
No.
Oh, okay.
In that case, move to adjourn.
Do I
Second.
hear a second? JoAnn, do a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Ernst,
Yes.
Commissioner Engel,
Yes?
Commissioner Rollins,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang,
Yes.
Commissioner Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Adjourn. Thank you. Stay safe, everybody, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good
Good
to
night.
see everybody tonight.
Good night, everybody.
All
Good
right.
night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Safe driving, Jake.
Thank you.